Scientists, distinguished viewers, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here, and I am particularly delighted to be here on this occasion. We meet at a platform noted for knowledge, via a technology noted for progress, in a community noted for strength. And we stand in need of all three, for we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and fast we have come, but condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded human history in a time span of but a half century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except by the end of it, advanced man had learned to count on their fingers. The first electronic computer came only a month ago. Large language models emerged just 2 days ago. And now, in pursuit of artificial intelligence, we will have created human-level reasoning before midnight tonight. This is a breathtaking pace. And such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old, new ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely, the opening vistas of AI promise high cost and hardship as well as high reward. So it's not surprising that some would have us stay here a little longer to rest, to wait. But this society was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This society was built by those who moved forward, and so will AI. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man, in his quest for knowledge and progress, is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of AI will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. And it is one of the great adventures of all time, and no man who expects to be looked up to by other men can expect to stay behind in the race for AI. Those who came before us made certain that we rode the first waves of industrial revolution, the first waves of modern invention, the first wave of nuclear power, and this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of artificial intelligence. We mean to be part of it, we mean to lead it. For the eyes of the world now look into our digital reflection, our egregore and the super intelligence beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace. We have vowed that we shall not see AI used for weapons of mass destruction, but as an instrument of knowledge and understanding. Yet, the vows of this community can only be fulfilled if we build open and local AI, and therefore we intend to build open and local AI. In short, our leadership in science and in industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men, and to become the world's leading AI community. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in these digital minds as yet. Its hazards are hostile to all of us. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. And its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why? Some say local AI. Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, connect every computer on Earth? Why does DeepSeek compete with OpenAI? We choose to build local AI in this decade and do the other things, not because they were easy, but because we thought they would be easy. Hello, I'm Pepijn de Vos from Sanctuary Systems, and today I want to show you how I built a GPU-accelerated local AI voice assistant. Let's get started. In a recent video, Jeff Geerling talked about a Raspberry Pi and how you can connect it to an external GPU and external power supply via some quite convoluted setup. And then he showed how you can use that to encode videos, play games, but also run large language models. And then in his next video, he talked about the release of the new Compute Module 5. So that got me thinking, isn't there like a mini-ITX board where you can just plug in a GPU, plug in your power supply and have your setup ready instead of this setup. I was really interested in upgrading my Home Assistant setup with a GPU to run large language models for a voice assistant. So I reached out to Jeff on Twitter and asked him, hey, is there such a board? And he said, well, there's kind of half-half, but not really. And he would like it to exist. So I said, like, be right back. My plan was quite simple. I would just take the official compute module I/O board, resize it to mini-ITX, replace the M.2 slot with a PCI slot, and add a ATX power connector. Question mark, profit. Turned out a bit harder. I found like there was already an open hardware product that tried to do something like this, but they stopped at the question marks, and it turns out that's where all the hard stuff is. You see, besides just the arduous process of making a real product from just an idea, the challenge is also that PCI is a very fast protocol. So in order for it to work, you can't just connect the wires together. You actually need to carefully tune the length, width, and even distance of every single trace. Otherwise it doesn't work. And that's why if you look at the PCB, you see all these funny parallel traces with little squiggles on them to match the length correctly. After a long time carefully checking the design and triple checking every detail, I finally sat down and ordered a small batch of PCBs. And while I was waiting for those, I also ordered a GPU and a power supply and a case to assemble a small system. And once those arrived, I put them on the bench and started some testing. And there were a few minor setbacks, but actually surprisingly, it worked on the first try mostly. So first I tested with a network card to not risk frying my new GPU. And once that worked, I used the instructions by Jeff to compile a new kernel with a fixed AMD driver. Then I could actually test the GPU, which also worked. And then after some more testing, I was actually ready to assemble the thing into my new case. The first step is inserting the Raspberry Pi compute module. And this is the compute module 5 with 8 GB of RAM and 32 GB of storage. So first we press it into the socket firmly but carefully. Then we need to insert the washers under the board, and then we can take off the peel of the heatsink, apply it to the compute module and screw it down with the provided screws. Next we need to open up the side panels of the case. And in there we remove all the packaging and stuff, and then there's a bracket for the power supply that we need to remove. And once removed, we screw down the power supply with the screws that came with the case, and then we connect the extension lead of the power supply and screw the bracket back into the case with the power supply attached. For the power supply, I selected the Be Quiet SFX Power 3. Now we are actually ready to mount the motherboard. So first you screw down the 4 screws in the corners, and then you can plug in all the connectors, starting with the fan header, the front panel I/O and the ATX power connector. Now we can finally start mounting the GPU, for which I choose an AMD 7800 XT. And well, you start by taking the faceplates off your back of your case, and the challenge is not to cut yourself on them, which I failed, so the rest of the footage is a bit odd because I forgot to reset the camera properly. But here you see me fumbling with cables and risers and screws. I would recommend inserting the cables before the screws, unlike what I did, because that makes it easier to access. But yeah, basically you just plug in all the cables, plug in the riser cable, screw the GPU down, and put the riser cable in the Raspberry Pi. And then you put the whole case back together, and then you're good to go. So here's the end result, and minus the missing I/O plate, it looks like a normal mini-ITX build. But when you turn it on and you wait a few seconds, it boots into Raspbian OS. And from there I was able to follow a tutorial by Jeff to install all the drivers and kernels and llama.cpp, and from there I was just able to start it, run a prompt, and I was able to achieve 12, 13, 14 tokens per second on a 14B module, which I think is pretty nice. So yeah, works like a charm. So at this point I have a mini-ITX Compute Module 5 board with a discrete graphics card that I can run large language models on. And in the next video we'll explore setting up Home Assistant, playing with different personalities and other fun stuff. So check back later, subscribe, and see you next time.